Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Laker, and this is
Laura Woodward.
welcome to our show, Love at First Page.
Conversations between a producer and a writer.
And we are here, producer and writer, different worlds, or not so different worlds. Can you help me out?
Yes, if you like what you see, please don't forget to push that like button and subscribe. We need you.
And this is something that, as well, in a relationship is gold. When you complement each other, when you know exactly that you can trust without having too much words to get to this next level. And show you what is really important in order to get your screenplay from the idea, the concept, to paper, to pages, and then later on, find the person you trust to collaborate with, your producer, and then get it done. As today is the first time when your baby sees the light. Because as a writer, you hold on so tight. You just want
Is it?
to perfectionize it. And we spoke a lot about craft, and craft is essential. But Laurie, tell us, what was the first person that you shared Artenia with and why?
The first person I shared Artenia with was my critique group. I had two women that were also writers, and I brought my early pages to them, which is a pretty scary thing to do. And that's what we're going to be talking about today is sharing your work with others, trusting that their feedback is going to be good, and also how much revision do you need before you say, okay, I'm done.
Mhm.
I trust that this project is ready and I'm going to release it out into the world.
And how many NDAs did you have, or did the people have to sign before you shared the first pages?
I've never signed an NDA in my life. Never. No. Because I started as a novelist
Mhm.
and a short story writer. I short stories, novels, poetry. I entered screenwriting much later. I've only been screenwriting maybe 4 years.
Uh-huh.
So I'd written 8 novels or 9 novels by the time I started screenwriting.
But weren't you scared that somebody would steal your idea?
Um, no. I wasn't. I don't know. I'm a very trusting person, maybe, to my detriment, but I mean, these were people I knew. These people in my critique group, they were people I knew. They were people that I'd been friends with, and in a critique group, you bring your pages and you ask, other people to read them, or you read them aloud, and you're asking for feedback so
Mhm.
that you can improve your craft. So I've never heard of an NDA for a critique group. Actually, if someone asked that to happen, I would think there's something wrong, that they had this, huge fear or something. Yes,
Mhm.
yeah. But I think, the novel writing world is very different than, the Hollywood world. I think in the film world, there's a lot more fear of ideas being stolen. But I've gone to lots of workshops, and I have not heard that that's as common as people are afraid it's going to be.
Mhm. Yeah. And so what was the most scary, because you said it was scary. What was scary about it to share the first
Is
page
it is
with the
it good
world?
enough? Are they gonna like it? Does this sound funny? Am I describing things well? Are my characters interesting? Is my world building okay? Is this exciting enough? How's the action? I mean, you have a million things,
Uh-huh.
going through your head, and it's public too. And when you're in a critique group, it's a public format, so you've got a whole group of people that are hearing your work, and then they're giving you feedback. Now, when you do join a critique group, it's a good thing to have guidelines, though,
Mhm.
that you always want to use respectful language, that when you give feedback in a critique group, or even like with one person, you should always start with a positive, something that you like about the work, even if you don't like it very much. And then give constructive criticism in a way that is actionable for the writer, you don't want to just say that sucks. What you want to say is, well, the dialogue on page, 17 was a little stilted and you kind of repeated yourself on page 19. Things like that that would be easy for them to go back and work and change. And then you want to end your critique also with another positive so that they feel like, okay, well, there were things they want that this person wanted me to change. But overall, they said some nice things. And then because the goal of the critique group is to co-create
Mm-hmm.
success for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a competition. I was not there to go compete with other writers. I was there to go co-create success. We
Uh-huh.
all wanted to work on our craft. We all wanted to get better.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a competition, so we wanted to nurture and foster that with each other as much as possible. Yeah.
Would you agree that there is this fostering and nurturing is good to a certain extent, but there is also the point where too many cooks spoil the soup?
Yes, exactly. And I have seen that, and it's very hard if you're especially in a critique group, if you've got critiquer one says change it, this way, and then critiquer two says change it that way, and then, but then that's when you have to use your own judgment. So
Uh,
if you have conflicting opinions within your critique group, then you have to say, well, if I change it this way, how does that feel for me? How does it feel authentic to me? And if I change it this way, so you have to be true to yourself.
Hold on. On the one hand, you should check your ego at the door. This is what we talked about so often
Yeah,
the last
exactly.
weeks. And now you said you should be true to yourself. So how can I balance this so that it makes sense to me that I can really find the best out of all worlds to
Mhm.
move further with my screenplay?
Well, the checking the ego at the door is the first step. First, say, okay, I'm going to remove my ego and I'm going to look at the work objectively. And I'm going to say, is what critiquer number one said valid?
Hmm.
And I'll look at the work and say, if it's valid, yes, I'll change it.
Hmm.
Or is it not valid? And then I won't. But I would just say thank you for your notes. Thank you for your opinion. I wouldn't argue with them about it. I have been in critique groups where people were very new to the process and they
Hmm.
started to argue and they didn't really understand that we're not here, but you don't get it, they would say. No, no, we're not here to argue.
I know.
We're just telling you what we felt and
Yeah.
our observations. And you can either take our advice
Uh-huh.
or you can set us aside. It's your work at the end of the day.
Mhm.
I'm just here to be helpful to you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a writer, you have the veto rights. No
Of
matter what
course.
feedback is coming your way, you decide what you do with it and how you materialize it. If you make use of it, or if you say, no, my intention, and there the intention is very important to have this intention set and as a basically as a North Star guiding you yourself through
Mhm.
the process. And part of the process is as well to let go and let other feedback in.
Mhm.
Allow it that you have the yeah, basically to listen to what the world has to say about your idea. And Rick Rubin said it. Your idea, the minute it you share it with the world, it can manifest. And
Mhm.
before that, it's just in your brain. But when you put it
Exactly.
out there, it's becoming something. So it's there. It's already a success. It's a
Exactly.
success the minute you put it out there because you open the floor for it to be successful. But you, as the writer, you are the CEO of your script, so to say. You have to
Exactly.
decide and make these critical decisions and approach this with a lot of discernment. Is this the vision that I want to portray? And is it coming from, again, my heart, my intention?
Mhm. That's true. One thing I'm very proud of because I know, an educator for so many years and in many critique groups, I was very, very good at looking at people's intention.
Hmm.
So oftentimes I could tell exactly what someone was trying to execute in their screenplays or their short stories or their novels or their poetry. And I could see why that message wasn't coming through for me.
Mm.
What was blocking it? So yeah, I was actually I led critique groups as well. So and one thing I did always when I was teaching elementary school is I taught narrative and so led children through that. And it was a lot of fun helping them find, their story and
Yeah.
what their intention was in fostering that. Yes. Yeah.
You just mentioned it. It's your story. It's your personal story, and it's always something that you find in the screenplay, like music we talked about last week. You find music in the screenplay, and you find as well the true intention
Mhm.
of the screenplay. And I can tell it. I have as well this kind of superpower to read it between the lines when
Mhm.
somebody is pitching it to me. Is it authentic? Is it true? Is it your true story that you want to share, that you want to tell? And
Mhm.
one block that I observed was really like that the people weren't honest with themselves, that they wanted to portray somebody or something with this story or to go into a different genre that they were meant to be. Um, for
Mhm.
example, there's a big discussion and a big hype about making horror movies. And so all of a sudden, people jumped on making and writing horror screenplays because they had heard this is for a first-time writer, director, whatever. It's the way to go to in order to make
Mhm.
some money and then focus on what they intended to do, which is maybe a drama or a coming of age story, which would
Mhm.
not be sellable that easily like a slasher horror movie. However, when it's not your story and you don't fall for these kind of things
Mhm.
and you don't have a connection, this connection will not be found in your screenplay and hence it's shallow. It,
Exactly.
it's not there. It's not existent. And
Mhm.
I'm curious to know from your experience, what is it that you observed as the major block in people that were not able to convey the story that they intended to tell and instead were almost like remaining on the surface level and not having something that was really like touching the audience.
Well, I can speak personally to that. For me, there's sometimes this fear of vulnerability
Mhm.
that if you're too honest, it's a very vulnerable place.
Oh, yes.
And it can be a wounded place.
Yeah.
And do I want to let people into this wounded, vulnerable part of me?
Mhm.
Or do I want to, exist a little bit more on the surface
Mhm.
at this and in this fun place? I think I mentioned before I wrote a semi-autobiographical book called Finding Joy, and I had to go to some very dark places,
Mhm.
and they were very vulnerable places, and I had to get in touch with memories that were very painful.
Mhm.
Now, the writing was very powerful as a result, but then sharing that was very frightening because it was so vulnerable for me. And
Mhm.
I would say that that's something, what's that saying that I've heard? Writing's easy. All you got to do is open a vein. People say. I mean, but which is somewhat true.
It
If
is.
you want authenticity,
Yeah.
you have to be open.
Yeah.
You have to open your heart. You have to open your wounds. You have to get in touch with something deeper in yourself. And like what you're talking about, the horror movies, I could never write a horror movie. I couldn't go there. It's just too dark for me. I couldn't. It would scare me to death just writing it. I just couldn't do it. It would be so inauthentic. People would look at it and then throw it in the trash. It just because it's not me. It's not who I am, and I have to be true to who I am when I write.
Yeah. I had this experience actually writing my first screenplay ever, which is The 25th Demon, the truth about narcissistic insanity. And I created this character, this lead based out of my experience that I had in abusive narcissistic relationships. And so I totally understand this dark places that you have to go in order to make as well the audience feel. And the people I shared it with, it was a process. It was hard for me to stop writing and really be able to share it. And I remember we had table reads for that. We had as well actors interested in it. We haven't gotten it made yet to that point because it's a very complex story. It's a very, very powerful story because it shows narcissism not as the media portrays it, but really the true faces that often you cannot see. Who is the narcissist and who is the survivor? I don't call it victim because I don't see it as a victim, and I don't want to victimize the person who survived and came out of a narcissistic relationship or dynamic. Um, but it's showing in a way that I had to visit those dark places, crafting this character so that this character could be felt by the reader and later by the audience. And I remember this one table read which we had where we had actors involved and actresses involved, and it was about 9 people doing this table read because it's a very complex story. It's a series. And I was so nervous because I had such a good feeling about what I was writing on the one hand, but at the other hand, I was like at such a vulnerable place, and in between writing the different scenes, I had to stop and watch a funny movie in order to get out of that place because it was really like soaking me in and pulling me down. In part of it was remembering my old life experience, and at the other hand, adding even more power and more darkness to it so that what I felt back then could be portrayed to an audience that hasn't been there, you
Mhm.
know? And it was hard for me to let go and
Mhm.
say, okay, here world, have a read
Mhm.
and give me your honest feedback.
My guess is that table read was really powerful for
It
you, though.
was.
That the support that you then got and the feedback that you got was cathartic
Yes.
for the healing from that narcissistic relationship. And that's one of the beauties of writing.
Right.
Writing can be such a beautiful catharsis for us, and release so many things. So to take something so painful and then to turn it into art is a beautiful thing. Really is. And it's so healing for us as well.
But to your point, yeah, it's a catharsis, but only when you let it out.
Hmm.
Because otherwise you're holding on to something that is still, and referring Rick Rubin again, in your head. But the minute you put it out there and you let it go, and you let others experience it, feel it, you
Hmm.
have not instant gratification. This is what we're looking for. We spoke about this before our call.
I don't think that's possible.
This world is just messed up because we are instantly gratified with everything. Like we collect stars and hearts and whatnot, and get on social media immediate feedback. But sometimes things they have to simmer. They have to just stay with the people in order to have an impact. And the impact sometimes is not shown instantly, sometimes not even like a week or so later, but it will come.
Mhm.
And as well, when you as a writer are when you are at this point where you think you have to let go, what was the moment that pushed you saying, okay, I have now 52 versions. It's
Because I
it's
know.
good to
Um,
go now. Or what was basically the point where you were sure, okay, now it can go. I let it.
well, everybody has a different process. I know people that are outliners and they outline everything before they, start writing a page of their screenplay. Other people use the save the cat, 3x5 cards. Other people are complete, what they call them pantsers. They just, write by the seat of their pants. I'm kind of a mixture of that. I revise as I go. I revise a little bit as I go.
Mhm,
But for me, like I'm getting back to where you were before, it's always about the process.
mhm,
It's not, I mean, yes, I set goals. Like my goal is I'm going to finish this sci-fi novel by the end of the year. Boom. And I set a goal last year. So I do set goals, But in the meantime, while I set that goal, I want that process
Mhm.
to be as satisfying as possible. And for me, revising is a wonderful process. I love taking a sentence and reading it again and again and again. And how can I make that better? How can I make that clearer for the reader? How
Yep.
can I make it more poetic? How can I make it more beautiful? How can I make this metaphor more interesting? How can I go deeper into the character so that the reader feels something?
Mhm.
And yeah, you can revise for years. And I did with Artenia, like, this. I I did multiple drafts before I sent it out, maybe 10, 15, 20, maybe before I sent it out. And it got close in Random House. And then they gave me some criticism. And so then I hired a professional editor
Yeah.
who actually was a line, not a there's been editing and revising. Revising is working on the story, the voice, the structure, the sound, the emotional connection. Editing is, your periods, your commas, your formatting.
Yeah.
So I hired someone to help me with the revisions so that the overall story got better. And so I did another, I don't know, 10 drafts maybe with that person. And then I kept sending it out again. And then every time I get a rejection, I would revise again. So 10 years later, I finally got a publishing deal. But even then, my publisher next chapter asked me for some changes. So I had to revise it again.
Ah,
So and getting back to the ego at the door, all those times my goal was just to make it the best it could be.
yeah.
But I didn't only work on that. I didn't just, oh, I'm only good. I mean, I wrote Artenia 2, Artenia 3. I worked on Dean and JoJo. I worked on many other, lots of short stories, lots of poetry in between, while I was still tweaking Artenia to get that sale and getting feedback from other people. For advice for that, what I've read is, you finish something and you feel like it's done, set it aside.
Mhm.
Don't even look at it or think about it for a month. Go do another project,
Right.
for a month.
Mhm.
Then come back and just, sit in a chair, no distractions, no social media. Put your phone in the other room, put your computer in the other room, print out the entire manuscript and just read it without a pencil or anything from beginning to end. Try to see where there are still some places where you go, oh yeah,
Mhm.
this is where I stumbled. This didn't sound right. And then go back and then pencil in some of your changes a month later. But if you do it like boom, I finish it and I'm going to revise again. Boom, you're gonna have trouble being objective,
Yeah.
and looking at it. And also, as I said, I was in critique groups for years and years and years and years. And there are professional people out there, professional editors, that you can hire as well. So that I wasn't really doing at first with screenwriting was putting the poetry into the screenplay itself.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's something that Christopher Nolan is known for. When he's going to give you a character description, he's going to do it very poetically
Yeah.
so that you're going to be able to see a fully fleshed character right in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
And I think, and I thought, well, that's what I would prefer to do. I didn't, at first I was writing the, like, woman, 30s, look, looks tired. It's not, it wasn't very interesting in any of my descriptions. So then since taking this one course, I've been trying to put the poetry back
Yeah.
into my
Mm.
character descriptions and into the action. Another thing with screenplays, you want to look at the white space too. You do not want chunks that are too long of text because especially today, people are not very patient.
Mhm.
So they want something that's going to read very quickly. So imagine your eyes are going over the page and you want to help the reader skim over the page, as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
You only want to include those things on that page that are the most important to the story. which is, it's very different, like, very different than a novel,
It
because you
is.
can add all kinds of things in a novel, but with a screenplay, you really have to get down to the core of the story, which was great for me to go from novel writing to screenwriting, because what it did for me in Artania was really get me back to the heart of the story. Be
Hmm.
like, oh, this is the heart of my story. Oh,
Yeah.
this is what it's all about. It's all about art being a superpower, that there's something beautiful inside all of us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to nurture that the best I can in the screenplay. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I think poetry is not to be rushed. This is something that you can take out of that as well, what you just said. You said multiple things. And I think that the most important message is really like your screenwriting process. It can't be rushed.
Mm,
You have to let it flow. You have to let it um, find its own path and its own method, because even though you got feedback from the outside, it was not that this feedback is giving you that validation that says, okay, now you're ready to share it with the world.
mhm,
It's giving you feedback, yes, and you continue working on it. But you decide as an author, as a writer, what do I take from that, and what do I leave with them as
mhm,
just being a feedback and just having like an idea that I take to something else maybe, because every time you get an inspiration from somebody talking and revising your work,
mhm,
you can make use of this information and this exchange that is
mhm.
happening,
Exactly.
exchange of energy at some point, maybe not for this screenplay, but maybe for something else. So it's
Mhm,
always great to talk about it. Plus, it gives you more, like, it brings it to life already, because
mhm,
eventually you're putting it on screen. You want to bring it to screen. So you have eventually to be able to withstand all the critique that is coming there.
mhm,
And perfection is never something that is like 100% done with a heart, because perfection, and this is where you said you realized the poetry was gone, when you want to replace perfection and structure and replace love and replace emotion, that
mhm.
the core message of Artania basically is lost, right?
Well, we talked about that in negotiations. We talked about, I said that, I'm very willing to make changes, but there are a few things that I'm not willing to do. I'm not willing to turn Artania into something that is, very, I don't know what's the word, I think, like very rude, and because Artania is more ephemeral. It's more like Narnia.
Yeah,
I don't want, a lot of bathroom humor and that sort of thing. Those are areas that I would have really balked at,
yeah.
is in a lot of that sort of thing, because I think it would have diluted the message of Artania, of
Yeah.
art being a superpower, of, love of art and love of creativity and finding the wonder inside of yourself. To me,
Mhm.
it's like, it'd be hard to find. I'm gonna find the wonder inside myself and then fart rainbows. I just don't think that goes together. So there's some areas that I definitely would, or anything that would be instilling, bad values into children,
Uh-huh.
being a mom and a longtime educator, those there are some things that I just would not budge on. Um,
Yeah.
but I am still very flexible. At the
Yeah.
end of the day, you do want to use your professional judgment.
Hmm.
And there's a balance. Okay, you want to use your professional judgment, but at the same time, you want to be authentic to yourself.
Hmm.
And that is a juggling, act, isn't it? Yeah.
It is absolutely. And I mean, this is basically the perfect seg to what you should look for when you start your negotiation process, when you start talking to producers, studios, people who are interested or show interest in your work.
Yeah.
And when you have the feeling, even if it's a subtle nudge, okay, now it's time to let go, to let it go. And
Mhm.
then be prepared and wisely look for the right collaborators and people you let in, because as everybody is stealing and everybody is misusing or everybody is transforming it into something that is of their interest, it's
Mhm.
important that you find the people that are aligned, that have the same interests as you
Mhm.
with that, and therefore the conversation before a negotiation starts
Mhm.
is as equally important as the paperwork itself.
Exactly. Yes, very much so. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is what I would love to talk to you about next week more because you were totally new to that part of the process.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And I think this is a very, very crucial point because once you let it go, you have to make a decision. What am I going to do with it? Let us,
Yeah.
and yeah, this is something that I would love to talk more about next week with you. And to let the audience as well have an insight into that very, very important step of our relationship, and that in the right environment, it can be as well a building block that is another layer of success.
Yeah. So next time we'll talk about option agreements, shopping agreements. What are they? And should you move forward with them? What to do during that process?
And who do you pull in order to help you in that process? Because if you need advice, ask people, yes, but go back and focus on what you want to put out there. Because at the end of the day, especially for the next step, it's important that you are clear. What is your vision? What is your focus? Because a lot of decisions will be made in the next step of the process. And
Exactly.
it's all boiling down to how solid you are in your vision and what you want to put out there.
Okay. Thank you. And don't forget to push that subscribe button and that like button. We need you.
Absolutely. Until next time,
Bye
have a good
bye.
one. Bye bye.